Back in the distant year of 2017, a little indie game called Bendy and the Ink Machine was released for all the world to enjoy. And sure enough, the game quickly exploded in popularity, being all over the internet. Now, we're not here to talk about the franchise's history because, judging by how you clicked on this video, you probably already know. But, to summarize, the Meatly Games / Kindly Bee / Jerry Drew Studios released the next 4 chapters to mixed responses, before moving away from Bendy to focus on their new game Showdown Bandit, which, upon release, nobody gave a shit about, and they eventually delisted the game from Steam. Then the franchise went on a bit of a losing streak. They released a cheap, top-down, randomly generated game about Boris, which I will get into later, which was just kind of mediocre and wasn't enough to satisfy the fans. They got into a lawsuit with their own merch supplier, Fat Mojo, mostly due to Showdown Bandit merch not exactly selling at all. But then, finally, in 2022, Jerry Drew Studios finally got their big break when their next big mainline game finally released. Bendy and the Dark Revival. The game built upon everything that the previous game did and more. It enhanced the combat, added new fan-favorite characters, the story was better, and wrapped up those loose ends from the previous game. And overall was a much better video game compared to the previous one, which was sort of a glorified walking simulator. And now, in the year of our Lord 2025, we've hit a sort of renaissance for Bendy. Sure, it isn't nearly as popular as it was back in 2017, but the series is doing just fine, and with new projects being announced constantly, I thought it would be fun to go through all of the upcoming Bendy projects, to see what's next for him. First of all, we've got Bendy Lone Wolf, which was basically the Meatly and crew looking at Boris and saying, hey, let's make this actually good. Yeah, Boris and the Dark Survival was a cheap little game made back in 2020 to tide people over until the next big Bendy game came out in 2022. And it was fine, I guess. It's just kind of like the fetch quest missions from Chapter 3 of Bendy and the Ink Machine, except from a top-down perspective. Which, might I remind you, nobody likes! So you just know this game was a recipe for success. I mean, the fact that it's randomly generated makes things a bit more interesting, and the free updates were also nice, but ultimately, these little sparks of light couldn't save it from the fact that it was the Chapter 3 fetch quest missions. However, in 2024, Jerry Drew Studios announced that they were taking another crack at the game, now titled Bendy Lone Wolf. Just looking at the screenshots and trailers, you could tell that this has had a lot more care and development time put into it. The game just generally looks so much better, with the game now more resembling Bendy and the Dark Revival, whereas the original Dark Survival was like a weird hybrid of both. Like, what the fuck is going on there? We don't see much and don't have a lot to go off, which is a common theme for a lot of the things here, but we can see things in the trailer like combat, traps, new locations, and things using their Dark Revival designs. They really are just taking Boris and the Dark Survival and making it, well, way more interesting. It seems like they're really making the most out of this quickly put together engine they made back in 2020. Sure, I don't think it'll be amazing Game of the Year worthy or anything, but it doesn't need to be, and I certainly think it'll surpass anything the original Dark Survival tried to do. This game was a fun little time waster, but this looks like a proper video game. Safe to say I'll be playing this one when it comes out, and you can be double certain because they're actually giving this game away for free if you already own the game on Steam. I don't know about the other platforms, but yeah, so that's really nice and appreciated. Up next, we have another Bendy related thing coming out in 2025, Bendy the Cage. Not much is known about this game actually, all we have is a short trailer showing some old guy and that's about it. Bendy the Cage! The itself is pretty similar to Dark Revival, but Meatly has gone on to say that it will be more of a psychological horror. Now, as a man who's played the psychological horror to end all psychological horrors, Dogman Mission Impossible, it's safe to say that I am experienced in this field of gaming. So, I'm gonna make the bold prediction that the game will be scary. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about this one other than it's the new Bendy thing, and you could already find that out by doing a Google search. So I guess we could move on to the next big Bendy thing, the merchandise. You see, after being sued by their own merch maker, Fat Mojo, for a no amount of money, they scrambled to try and get some more merch back up. And following Dark Revival's release, they were able to get a new merch store out full of in-house made products. And yeah, they were fine, but nobody was exactly going ballistic over the Bendy Tiki heads. What they needed was a proper, official head merch maker, and after dabbling in stuff like U2s, they finally partnered with the absolute chads over at Jack Specific to make brand new Bendy merch, namely what all kids drool over, action figures and plushies. The action figures are perfect. Oh my god, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. They all have this glossy texture on them to replicate the look of the ink on the characters, and it works so damn well. These guys look ripped straight from the games. Jax did such a good job. Even the smaller things like the packaging look better, looking and feeling more premium, or at least to me. Now, I can't review these figures in person because I am a UK bloke, and these figures were launched exclusively in Walmarts and GameStops across the USA and Canada. So, Meatley, could you do us all a favour and pop these in my local Asda, please? Thank you. And finally, we have the big boy that everyone's been talking about, the cream of the crop when it comes to recent Bendy news, aka the Bendy and the Ink Machine movie. Or at least, that's its legal name, but its friends call it the Bendy movie. Like with Bendy the Cage, not a lot is known about this project. It was revealed in December of 2023, and we haven't gotten a whole lot of information since then, except the reveal of the director, of which is who? And that's kind of been it, except for the occasional tweet of Meatley saying, oh, it's going to have a lot of practical effects. But we can't really predict what this film is going to be about until we have some really concrete evidence. But judging by the fact that it's titled Bendy and the Ink Machine and not Bendy and the Dark Revival and or his Dark Survival Lone Wolf or Cage, it's likely that this movie will retell the events from the first game in some way. Which is fine, I like the story of Bendy and the Ink Machine, it's just that the story feels a bit incomplete but it's just by itself, and you don't have the context given in Dark Revival. Who knows? Maybe they'll make a follow-up film if this one does well enough. And hey, if a brown animatronic bear can nab $300 million, then so can a small cartoon rat. And that's all of the new things that are happening with Bendy. Quite a lot, I must say. Especially compared to the past, where we would get, what, like, one new game every 5 years? And yup, that's the Bendy and the Ink Machine renaissance. And, well, it's been a wild ride, but it seems like the game is still running. So, now that I'm sober and don't have a beer bottle in my mouth causing me mouth pain, I guess we can finally enjoy the game to its full extent. Ah!